This is Pukeology Podcast, where science meets your hilarious puke stories and the tips and tricks to stop that up chuckle that you need.
You never know what's going to spew out of her mouth. Here's
my mama,
Dr. Pukeology.
Can I drink coffee while being pregnant? I get this question all the time being a pregnancy doctor because every woman that I know is looking for a little pep in their step in the mornings. But how much coffee is too much? Let's find out today in Pregnancy Pukeology Podcast, episode 79. Can you drink coffee while pregnant? Do you want no more morning sickness, pregnancy nausea, or how about no more headaches, migraines, or sleep problems? Visit our sponsor, nomonausea.com, the only natural way to instantly stop your worst nausea, vomiting, or headaches now. All you got to do is put it on your wrist and get 25% off with the code PUKE25 on their website. Again, get 25% off with the code PUKE, PUKE25, or just place the No More Nausea ban on your baby registry in your delivery room bag at Bye Bye Baby, or get it shipped for free in just 2 days as an Amazon Prime vendor. And know that your little ones are always taken care of with No More Nausea Kids and No More Sleepless Nights Kids. The sleep one works with moms with small wrists too. You can pick them up at your local Walmart store. Now, do you want to hear some pregnancy humor that may just make you want to pee your pants? Like you don't have to pee anyway, all the time, with hilarious stories like pickle puke, dunk that nugget, and cottage cheese, please. If you want to learn more about your pregnancy, humor and knowledge is the key to help you survive these 9 months. And just know we're in this together. Today, you will learn the science behind what is an acceptable amount of caffeine that you can have while you're pregnant. What are the risks to your baby if you're consuming too much caffeine, and ways to help you reduce that caffeine craving during your pregnancy. All served up hot today in Pregnancy Pukeology Podcast, episode 79. Can I drink coffee while pregnant?
The science of puke, Pukeology.
Well, caffeine during pregnancy. The main question that almost every single pregnant mom or woman always is asking is it safe to drink coffee during pregnancy? And if it is, how much should I take in a day? Well, as a physician, I will tell you that we say 200 milligrams is kind of like that limit, right? That is equivalent to about a cup a day. Now, if you're a person like me who likes tea, that's about 2 cups of tea. So always remember that tea is about half the amount of coffee. And so whenever you're pregnant, you want to decrease the amount possible of that caffeinated beverage. So again, try to use a caffeine chart, okay? And try to avoid consuming too much coffee in one short period of time. Let me get into a little bit more about why that is. So while you're pregnant, can you drink coffee? Yes, you can have coffee, you can have caffeine, but pregnant women can drink coffee, although it depends on the amount that is being consumed per day. Caffeine drinks can affect the baby in pregnancy, which is not directly seen or during. Now, you may actually notice that whenever you do consume coffee, tea, and or like a Coca-Cola, something that actually has caffeine, the baby might get very rambunctious and the baby might actually start to move a lot more. This will happen with sugar, but especially when it comes to caffeine. So because of the fact that it is able to penetrate through and it gets to the baby in very, very small concentrations. The advisable limit, once again, as a physician, is the limit of coffee intake. And we always say 200 milligrams a day, 1 8-ounce cup of coffee, depending upon the brand. Now, how much caffeine is safe during pregnancy? We just talked about the recommended dose is about 200, but expert believes that taking in a small amount can actually cause risk to your baby and your pregnancy. So let's talk about what actually happens when you are consuming caffeine, okay? So when you have caffeine or a caffeinated beverage, believe it or not, you're actually shunting and or you're helping to decrease you're increasing your high blood pressure. That's one thing that happens because the vascularity ends up shrinking more. So again, remember when you have that pounding type of headache and people say, hey, go drink a Coca-Cola or have a cup of coffee. Well, the reason why is because it shunts it and it helps to decrease that pounding sensation that you feel. Well, imagine your baby is also an organ group, right? As an organ system, your body or each organ from your brain, your liver, your kidneys, you're getting about 15%, right, of the amount of perfusion of the blood. So if you squeeze that a little bit more, what do you think happens? Okay. As you squeeze it, it's going to decrease the amount that actually gets to the baby through the placenta. So again, you have to remember that you as the mother are the only oxygen source, food source, things of that nature for the baby up until that they are born. Whenever you're doing that, you have to remember all of the things that you take into your body can also affect the baby. So taking in more than what is recommended, the amount, you have an increased risk for having a small baby. It's called a decreased, or also known as intrauterine growth retardation or intrauterine growth restriction. So again, you can do this multiple different ways. So a baby that has growth restriction can be because of increased cigarette smoking. It can be because of increased exercise where the mother is not making sure that the baby is getting enough of the actual blood because the mother is taking more of the blood flow, and or because you have an increased amount of caffeine in your diet. So it's decreasing that communication between you and your baby. Recent studies and recent research shows that even women who take in less than the desired recommended amount per day, which we had already said, people who had coffee every single day had slightly smaller babies than those who did not. Now, I'm not trying to scare you ladies, especially because I understand when I was pregnant with my first one, okay, I could deal with having no caffeine. But when you have a second one, you already have a baby at home, it was very difficult for me to get up, get moving, and things of that nature. So it's important that you take a look at your actual brands. Now, one other thing that I have a lot of women that ask me, can you breastfeed and drink coffee? Well, yes, but remember that some does cross the actual barrier for coffee in itself. So remember that the first 6 months after giving birth, we actually recommend that you keep that same 1 cup, 1 8-ounce cup as 200 milligrams because of the fact that the baby is actually getting it in the breast milk as well. So which foods and beverages can contain caffeine? It's important for you to be aware of what foods and beverages have caffeine and about how much is in each, okay? So we talked about tea. Tea generally tends to be a little bit less than actual coffee. Okay, usually it's anywhere in the realm of 70 to about 100 milligrams per cup versus coffee is about 200 milligrams depending upon which one. Now, I think there are some coffees out there that are like the Triple X brand or something. Those are the ones that are about 400 milligrams. Woo, you'll get a definite jump. All right, so let's talk about soft drinks, okay? Things like Coca-Cola. You have Mountain Dew, things of those nature. Those also have caffeine and caffeinated amounts. So those are equivalent to about green tea. So it's about half of the amount. Now, energy drinks. Now these can get a little tricky. Depending upon what energy drink, you probably could tell me better than I could. I don't drink them. I have way too much natural energy in me. But again, the actual energy drinks, some of them can range anywhere between 150 all the way to 500. And some, like Redline, you actually decrease the amount that you're supposed to have. You can only have like half of it per day. Now, other things that contain caffeine, which you might not think about, is chocolate. Yes, there's that addiction. Portion of it, but also coffee and ice cream. Now, again, it's much less. You have to remember that the amount is very, very small. But if you're consuming large amounts of, like you're literally bathing in a chocolate bath, well, then you could probably get enough of that caffeine in it. It also shows up in different herbal products and over-the-counter medications, which comprise of headache, cold, and allergy remedies. So to be safe, just always read the actual label. Make sure that you understand that there are some things such as Aleve, which is like an over-the-counter, something for headaches and migraines, that does actually contain caffeine, and so does Midol. Now, again, you're probably pregnant if you're watching this, or you're really thinking about getting pregnant close so you don't have to worry about menstruation and menstrual. But again, sometimes you just want to know, right? Sometimes you want to know how much caffeine that you are consuming. And not only that, but I always get questions revolving that. So whether or not you will bleed during your pregnancy or the beginning of it. So I will say that a lot of people have this misnomer that you will not have any type of discharge. Well, believe it or not, you will, and it changes. So something that is, if you're curious to see what kind of comes out down there during the pregnancy, head over to Pregnancy Pukeology Podcast, episode 22, Vaginal Discharge. You'll get a bunch of different questions answered. And then not only that, but there's also other pregnancy podcasts that are dedicated towards what does it mean if you are having blood. Always remember to go see your physician. Just because you're listening to me, the doctor, doesn't necessarily mean that that substitutes for an OBGYN. Again, make sure that you are being actively seen. But again, you can kind of give you an understanding as to what the misnomers are and when is it safe and when is it not safe to have anything that's coming out down there that you're not ready for. All right, guys, let's hear some really funny puke stories.
Throwing up on a Tuesday? One puke story.
I was green with envy. I thought it was just a phrase until I watched someone at the theme park put the largest, most glorious pickle on a stick in their mouth. I've never liked pickles, but I was pregnant with my first and it looked amazing. I took one bite and I was hooked. The only problem is I kept eating and eating and eating them. It was a summer and a hot sun day and the pickle juice didn't agree. I ended up getting terribly sick in the line to see the dolphins and looked possessed. Since my husband was drinking a beer, the people around me looked at me as though I had a hangover and I started puking all over the dolphin tank. I can't wait until my bumps start showing so that people know that I'm not throwing up because I was just hungover. Thanks so much, Stephanie, for that hilarious puke story. Keep sending them in. You never know. You're green with envy, but it makes us all have a good laugh. All right, I was in the drive-thru at Wendy's and their chicken nuggets and Frosties was totally calling my name. Since I was in the car and trying to hurry up with my 2 kids under 2 in the back, I decided to combine the 2 of them together and dunk the chicken nuggets in the icy. That actually doesn't sound bad. At that very moment, a huge wave of morning sickness overcame me, and I knew that that was the moment that I was pregnant again. I threw up all over my mom's shirt, or one of them, that I had just eaten chocolate chicken as though it was a meal, and the 2 thoughts again all over my shirt were disgusting. And then 3, I had to change my kid's diaper, so I had puke and poop. I started wailing, crying, and now I look back and laugh as a mom of 5. Well, God bless you, Tiffany, for that hilarious puke story. All right, my husband and I have always been very fit. We do CrossFit until I got pregnant, and the doctor said it wasn't a good idea to lift heavy anymore. We were on our way to my in-laws when I was starving. We went through the drive-thru, and of course, my husband orders a salad, and I got the greasiest value meal on the menu. I scarfed down the food so fast that my husband thought I was going to choke, and I added condiments directly to my mouth like a drink. Then he looked over at me, folded-legged, as I joked and said, "Want some fruit with that cottage cheese?" He was talking about the side of my legs, and at that very moment, I broke down in tears and started vomiting the nasty food I just ate. I don't think I will ever forgive him, especially since I ruined my favorite pair of Lululemon pants. All right, ladies, do you have a hilarious puke story that you just can't wait to share? Send it to me. Pukeology, Pukeology, @nomonausia.com. That's NOMONAUSEA.com. Or tweet me at Pukeology so we can all have a good laugh.
Tips and tricks to stop the chuckle that you need.
So most people want to know, how do you cut it back, right? If you're used to your morning cup of joe, you love your coffee routine, all of a sudden you get pregnant and that just throws it all off. I mean, it's kind of like, right, if you want to have rosé all day with your girlfriends whenever you have like a Sunday brunch with them. And then all of a sudden you get pregnant and you can't do any of that and you've now become the DD. Well, coffee I think is a little bit more difficult than the other bad things for us for pregnancy because it's something that's so innate and it's so ritualized inside of our everyday lives. So here's some ways to cut back on caffeine during pregnancy. All right, through all of this, remember, again, the whole goal is we're trying to reduce the amount of coffee intake. And I understand that it might not be easy. There's always the desire for a morning cup of coffee, just kind of something that kind of gets you up. However, the desire too might disappear in the first trimester because, again, the upset stomach. Now, if you do have morning sickness, please go on over nomonausea.com. It is the essential oil infused acupressure wristband that instantly stops your worst upset stomach, nausea, vomiting, and believe it or not, it'll actually help to decrease the amount of second trimester headaches and migraines if you do buy their Nomo migraine band. But again, it is a wonderful way to help you mamas to decrease the morning sickness. Your body generally tends to not want to crave the things that are bad for you. So I know personally, when I was pregnant with my first, I could not pump gasoline. The smell of gas actually made me super nauseous and I would puke every time at the gas pump. So it's almost like your body's like protecting the baby so you don't crave any of the things that are bad for you that you don't want. Now, I will say that there are some women who will say, absolutely not. I wanted a hot dog. I wanted lunch meat. I wanted, sushi. I wanted all the bad things that I wasn't allowed to have. And if you're curious on what are those foods that you must avoid, go over Pregnancy Pukeology podcast, episode 5, foods to avoid while pregnant. And that will tell you a little bit of everything that you need to know and why. So why can't you have pasta salad at a picnic while pregnant? And then why shouldn't you drink or on accident choke on, let's say like a water park water? Yeah, you probably can imagine it. There's some other excrements that are in there and you have an increased risk of getting an infection. So we women are naturally decreased our immunity while we're pregnant because we don't want to take over the baby. I explain a lot more of that whenever it comes to that episode 5. So please go back over and take a listen to it in all the different places that we're played at, from Spotify, Apple Podcast, Spreaker, any of those other things. All right, but here are the ways to help you reduce your caffeine cravings. All right, number 1, easily and gradually ease off. Okay. It's very important that you kind of pull it in. Don't go cold turkey. Okay. It's because of the fact that, remember, if you're somebody who's like used to it, you are going to be hating life. It's kind of like those people who are they want to go exercise. What do? Boom. They like change their entire life around. And then all of a sudden they get sick, their immune system suffers, and you have to do stuff gradually. Your body is not made for these shocking instant changes. All right. Number 2, try a mixture. Okay, for less caffeine. So if you're a person who likes to have a cup of coffee, only have half of that and then maybe fill up the rest with milk, or, maybe a third of that and then fill up the rest with milk. Do that little and little, less and less every single day. Switch to decaf. Now, I don't know anybody who drinks coffee for the taste. Maybe you do, but I personally don't. I don't like the taste of it at all. So for you, if it's good, if you love the taste of it, switch to decaf, right? Other sources of energy, okay? Smelling peppermint oil, okay? So again, inside of those Nomo nausea, Nomo migraine bands, they have essential oils of peppermint. Peppermint actually has an increase in that activity. Another great thing is smelling lemons, citrus, anything from that citrulline branch actually helps to give you a little pep in your step. Again, that was one of those little best kept secrets, I guess you could say, for people who are trying to lose weight. So it's not just about eating the grapefruit, it's about smelling it as well. All right, another thing is avoid herbal remedies. Again, sometimes a little ginger tea is fine, but most of the time these nice little teas, they do have caffeine or caffeinated beverages. However, most research can't talk today. Most researchers didn't find a problem relating to a moderate consumption of coffee. Okay, so again, they didn't find too much. There was a small differentiator between birth weight, but it's not specific enough to say, yes, coffee was definitely the problem whenever they were utilizing less than 1 cup per day of coffee. Now, another thing, they didn't find, that they didn't see the consumption when it came to intrauterine growth retardation unless you were going above that recommended 200 milligrams of caffeine per day, nor did they see any type of correlation with high caffeine and miscarriage and or prematurity in birth. That's why, again, on average, coffee intake is safe for pregnancy, so we don't tell people to kick it out, but we do remind people. Another thing is too, if you have pregnancy-induced hypertension, PIH, and or any type of preeclampsia, we're going to tell you, cut out the caffeine, my dear, okay? Because of the fact that we don't want to do anything that's going to squeeze those vessels or vasculature anymore. If you do have high blood pressure, we will tell you the same as a doctor to a patient. All right, to be on the safe side, it is better to limit the amount of coffee intake as much as possible to avoid any risks that are associated with taking too much coffee intake. Caffeine does cross the placenta into the amniotic fluid and into your baby's bloodstream. And remember, your baby has a very immature liver, not just when they're inside of the belly, but actually when they come out. So when they come out, that's why they have a high bilirubin content. A lot of babies look really, really jaundiced, right? That just means almost like a yellowish, orangish tint, and it's because their body can't break it down. Their liver is just too immature. So imagine you as a mom giving your baby caffeine, it goes through the placenta, it gets to their body, and they just can't process it. So what happens? It stays within inside of their system. Don't be surprised if that baby's jumping around in your belly for about 2 hours after you consume that coffee or caffeine. So again, when you take coffee, your baby is prone to a possible risk of them having a reaction to caffeine itself. And remember, the baby is still developing. Organogenesis, which is the actual formation of the organ groups, happens between 8 to 12 weeks of gestational age. Now, I'm not saying after you get to 12 weeks, you can go crazy, but that's when the major organs are being formed, from brain, heart, lungs, liver, all those other things. So it's really important that during that time, that you start to limit your diet and make sure that you're really watching what your baby goes into. All right, so caffeine is a stimulant so that it can cause different problems to you. It can raise your heart rate, your blood pressure. It can exaggerate pregnancy symptoms. It can make you feel jittery, have insomnia, upset stomach, heartburn, and frequent. Another thing is it can also cause a micro type of problematic nutrition. And I say that because when you fill up on things that are not necessarily good for you, you're not getting the amount of good calories that you need, okay? A Twix bar is not the exact same as having a handful of almonds or maybe even pretzels when you dip them inside of, let's say, hummus. The effect of caffeine can increase when the pregnancy progresses because the ability of your body to absorb the caffeine decreases and it grows in the bloodstream. It is also important that the reduced amount of coffee and tea because these beverages hinder the absorption of iron. Okay. And again, a lot of women who are naturally anemic, those are the ones who have their periods and they're crunching on ice. Okay. That's a sign of anemia. So you don't want to decrease the amount of absorption of iron. Please make sure that if you are consuming a lot of coffee, that you're getting a lot of green leafy vegetables. Okay. And you guys all know the ones that are green and leafy. That's because it will help to increase your actual iron concentration. So again, most pregnant women do have a lower iron count. So when you have to take coffee or tea in between the meals, you're just not going to be absorbing it as needed. All right. So I hope you now know the total story, right? Now that you know the medical reasons why you shouldn't be having more than 200 milligrams or more than 1 cup of coffee during your pregnancy each and every day. Also that you know why it is. What are those things and what are those side effects that are causing from you and the baby? And then most importantly, you got about 6 different ways to help to reduce your caffeine overload in order to start to basically make healthier decisions. Ultimately, I hope I've been here as your favorite doctor in order to give you the best answers that there is to know about pregnancy that there is to date. Now, if you love me and if you love Pregnancy Pukeology podcast, let me know. 5-star ratings or hearts for likes, go ahead and push on it right now. Don't forget to download this episode, but more importantly, share it with all your prego friends. Thanks again for listening to Pregnancy Pukeology podcast, episode 79, Can You Drink Coffee While Pregnant? See you next time.
Pukeology Podcast, edutainment at its finest.